Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to our January webinar, the first of our winter 2025 Central Command webinars. We're going to give everyone just one more moment if they've registered or they're grabbing a colleague to go ahead and get into this meeting, and then we will get started. Okay, we'll go ahead and keep letting people come in, but I'll go ahead and start with just some of our housekeeping announcements. So Michael, if you can go to the next slide. So today's topic is what's new in 7.76.1. So we've got two releases from December, and we're going to be talking about those today for those interested in upgrading or just wanting to know what's new within the product and where we've been going with Central Command. So the agenda for the presentation is going to be, first of all, the presentation. We're going to go through what's new in 7.76, and then we're going to take all question and answers at the end of the presentation. So during the meeting, please feel free to be using the chat or the Q&A to go ahead and ask your question. We'll make sure to note it to be able to ask at the end of our presentation. On to the next slide. So just as some housekeeping announcements, this webinar is being recorded. We are going to provide the link afterwards for those who want to re-watch, who weren't able to be here for the live event, similar to how we've also been providing the links for all of our fall webinars. All attendees for this call are going to be muted with cameras off, so no need to worry about if you're juggling something else, interrupting the conversation. And then again, use the Q&A tab or chat to ask any questions. So you can even in the Q&A tab, I think there's a way to like ask anonymously if you're feeling a little bit shyer, so you can do that if you prefer. Coming up next, as far as our winter webinars, just to give everyone a heads up, we've been doing some calendar jujitsu, trying to accommodate people on the Pacific side of the US, on the Atlantic side of the US, and even across the pond over in Europe. So we're settling on Thursdays at 11:30 Eastern time for our winter webinar series. So this is the first one of that. And then we've got another one in February, on February 20th, again, a Thursday at 11:30 Eastern for spring cleaning, maintaining a healthy environment and what you can do to have your application running as smoothly as possible. And then on March 20th, we're going to be talking about online data access, basically how to be able to access your data and report on it from the web client. So stay tuned. We're going to be sending out the link to this recording after the call. And as we get that published, we'll also have the registration pages for those two webinars for you to go ahead and put on your calendar ahead of time. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Michael Guiette, Director of Product Management here at ServeVita, and Janice Needham. You can see that she's joined us on the call as our Manager of Travel Development to talk about what's new in 7.76.1. Over to you, Michael and Janice.
Thank you, Bailey. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Happy day. I am Michael Guiette, Director of Product Management with ServeVita. It's nice to see so many people have joined the call today. Excuse me. We are going to be talking about our 2025 release. This actually was released at the beginning of December. Our release schedule, when you look at our historical releases, we've been doing 2 releases of Central Command a year. Typically, the spring release is going to be in the May timeframe. Normally, we were looking at November, end of November. This year, we did extend it just a little bit because Thanksgiving in the United States was so close to the end of the month. We went ahead and released it in the beginning of December. So our next releases, when they come out, again, May and November will be typical release time schedule. Today, we're going to be talking about 2 actual releases, 7.6 and 7.6.1. The reason why there were 2 is because of the functionality that's being released. We've enhanced Central Command with our opportunities for enhancements or bug fixes. We have added some new screens. We'll talk about some new screens and new functionality that's available. And then in 7.6.1 is really focused around our new NDC type of a parser or 2.0 parser functionality. So we'll get into that a little bit too. That's why Janice is here to lend us her expertise in doing all of that. So again, when you're upgrading this next time to the 7.6 environment, we're going to talk about two things here. I'm going to pop up this screen real quick, because when you download from the Unit 4 download site in my community, you'll go to my application ERP, go to the software tab. You're going to see two different downloads here. You'll want to download both of them, and the reason why is because the functionality changes within Central Command, the application, and the web screens. All of the release notes are in the Central Command 7.6 download. 7.6.1 contains the release notes for the Parser 2.0 upgrade. But when you install them, you'll only have to install the 7.6.1. These are cumulative upgrades, cumulative updates. So you'll only have to install the one, but you'll want to download both to make sure that you are getting the proper release notes and be able to see what's in them. With that being said, we're gonna jump into the 7.6. We have new web screens that are available. We have new functionality that is going to be available to those agencies who are using the web product. Still, the functionality is still in the desktop, but we've added new screens to the web. The new transaction screen, the TXB021 ticket vendor screen. We got some changes there, some improvements to speed and functionality. In the past, those customers who upgraded to 7.5 environment, they noticed some issues when opening that screen. We've made some corrections to that, so we don't see those issues anymore. We've made some data load improvements with the way that the process works with regards to working within the data carrier. We'll get into some details there. ARC and BSP changes, we'll talk about those. Exports, this is credit card export enhancements. We've got MES, import reconciliation updates. We've got some additional enhancements. And the big one for 7.6 was the TWK Web API. So we'll talk a little bit about that. In the 7.6.1, again, this one was defined around the Parser 2.0, those NDC interfaces, and where we're going with how are we getting additional content from non-GDS sources into Central Command. So 7.6. So the new screens in the web that we're talking about is we are starting to ensure that all of the functionality that is in the desktop is being converted or implemented in the web portal as well. Our latest updates here revolve around the commission matching. This is your car and hotel commission matching screens. These screens, which were before not available on the web, have been added to the screen. Now, this is when you have your GL posting to your commission account, and you want to then match those GL postings to the individual transactions within the travel module. So those are the first two screens. We are still working on the import and the screen that allows you to see the apply, unapply reconciliation screen. That screen was a lot more complicated. It is taking a little time, but it is on our roadmap for the next release. So we're working through those items to be able to allow agencies to use more functionality that's available on the desktop today on the web. The commission statement report history, this is your ability to go in and run that commissioned agent statement report history, being able to pull that up, look at that information on the screen. So again, if you're using the web, in the central command menu item under commissions, you'll have to enable the users to be able to see these screens in the access tab in your system administration, but that will be there when you upgrade to 7.6. Our ticket vendor screen changes. So there have been some issues that were identified where we were trying to attach documents to the transaction. These document archive issues have been resolved. We've also made changes to this screen that fix the supplier due date functionality. A lot of times, if you've gone into Central Command and you open something up and you looked at it and you tried to close it, it would say, do you want to exit without changing, without saving the changes? That was because the screen was trying to update based on this supplier due date. That's been resolved. It's also added some functionality that will lock and unlock that screen depending on the type of update you're making to that transaction. So just be aware of that, and you know, there is more information in the release notes, but that's part of it. If there are no changes to the ANVX field, remember our ANVX tells us if it's an automated airline ticket, ARC ticket, a non-ARC ticket, an exchange, or a vendor item. You know, the ANVX field, which is a calculated field, it will also affect that supplier due date, whether or not it's available to be modified in what you're doing. Okay, and then the IATA currency field has been added. So this IATA currency field, we've always had the transaction currency. So when you're issuing an airline ticket, even though your IATA currency is US dollars, if you were buying an intra-Europe ticket, the transaction currency of the base fare may have been euros, but Sabre gives us that euro base amount, and then they do your equivalent amount based on the IATA currency. So that's what we've identified here. We put in both the transaction currency of the local currency that's being ticketed, and then the IATA currency is that currency that the GDS is made to calculate using their exchange rates what the IATA equivalent of that is going to be. The data load improvements. Data load improvements are related to the speed in which the data gets imported into Central Command from those work tables. So what they've done is we've enhanced the data carrier. We've looked at, you know, reducing the number of calls to the database to get validation rules or to get other types of information that the data load needs to process new transactions. So these improvements are designed to make data load faster because it's not making so many calls to the database on a transaction by transaction basis. The ARC and BSP adjustment screen. We made some improvements here with regard to ARC and BSP. So there are a number of things that were defined here. So again, we had a document archive issue. If you were, let's say that you downloaded the adjustment from your ARC or BSP website and you wanted to attach that document onto the adjustment, those document archive issues have been resolved. And then actually I want to point this out. This ticket number field is a text box to improve performance. Here, where you got this original ticket number field, on both, and this is another thing that's on the transaction screen, very similar to it. But this field, the original ticket number, if you started typing in the ticket number, it would query the database as you typed to give you a list of matching ticket numbers to be able to pick from. That was slowing down this screen exponentially. So it was making way too many calls to the database for you to be able to display this screen. The same thing on that TXV 021 screen. At the top, when you were typing in a record locator or a transaction number, it would do the same thing, a type ahead, which was making too many calls to the database, slowing that screen down. So we've made a change to this. So this original ticket number box is now just a text field. It allows you to type in a ticket number. When you tab off of it, it goes look for that single ticket number and pulls the information in. So it does improve the speed of accessing the information from this screen. There we go. So ArcBSP parse. So now we are parsing into the BSP ticket information table, the spoiled ticket information. We've had requests from customers who in the ARC for years, you've been able to add spoiled tickets through the auto update, and it would put the spoiled tickets that BSP had identified or ARC had identified as spoiled tickets. It would automatically allow you to update them on the spoiled ticket to get rid of those exceptions where you had a spoiled ticket in BSP or ARC, but it's not in Central Command. So that's what this does. It allows us to identify in the BSP those spoiled tickets that have been identified by the BSP and included in their BSP hot file that you've downloaded. That also then allows us to, and it'll be the next screen. I'll go into the next screen when I get there. So this BSP reconcile, there were times when we had the BSP reconciliation, you would get an error that says ticket exchange in BSP only. So when you had the original ticket, the new ticket, and the exchange, the problem is that the original ticket, so if the BSP ticket was exchanged in the same week, the reconciliation process was only looking for BSP tickets with a status of active to reconcile that original ticket to the BSP hot file. So that's where we would see that the ticket wasn't in Central Command because the status of the ticket that had been exchanged came up as a D for partial exchange, an N, an S for the original ticket, the X for exchanged original, or Z forced refund. So the reconciliation process now reconciles the ticket number, and it takes into account any of these other status codes on that ticket row to be able to reconcile the original ticket that was issued in that same week against the transaction because it's already been exchanged. Okay, this new TSB ticket, canceled electronic ticket, is not in Central Command. This is this new exception does show up in Central Command so that we can make sure that because of the new ticket code translation or transaction code from the BSP, they're telling us what tickets have been spoiled, what canceled electronic tickets are in their file. So we can say this way, we know they haven't come over to Central Command. The next screen allows us to add missing spoil tickets. So it will look at that BSP data that's been downloaded in the hot file, see those two transaction codes that define those ticket numbers as spoiled tickets, and be able to add them to the spoiled ticket register so that those transactions can be reconciled correctly. Okay, so by running the auto update, selecting add missing spoiled tickets here, you'll be able to add anything from the BSP hot file that shows up as a canceled or spoiled electronic ticket directly to the spoiled commission register. Okay. So there are some of the other following exceptions that have been updated and corrected during the reconciliation, reducing the number of false exceptions that we're getting. And then the auto update is now able to create those spoil tickets. So I talked a little bit about that. Export enhancements. Credit card export, now we've added a flag that allows you to include void tickets on your credit card export. So some agencies want to include voids, some don't want to include voids. It's now your choice to be able to do that. MES import. The import and reconciliation of that MES data. We've added 2 additional fields here that allow you to enhance the number of fields that you're matching against. The PNR position. So if you know what the PNR is on that transaction, you're able to map it to the proper column of the import file and be able to reconcile against it. The payment date, plus or minus the number of days. So when we're looking at that and we've got the payment that we've put into the bank account, the general ledger, when we put that in there, this allows us to say, look, 2 or 3 days plus or minus this date. It allows us to say, I want to make sure that I'm matching the payment, even though the payment date might be 1 or 2 days off of the file that we're receiving. So being able to identify that and say, yeah, we received the check on the 10th of June, but the reconciliation date on the file that we got from MES was the 12th of June. We want to say plus or minus 3 days here so that we make sure and pick up and reconcile that information. Additional enhancements. We're going to talk about the items around the ACT extensions in a couple of minutes, but we do have new screens that have been enhanced both on the web and the desktop, the car segment, hotel segment maintenance screen. So we are recalculating some screens or some date fields, and you can see those and pick those up. The About Assemblies tab, we've got this screen that you can see what you have installed, how, what did we do? What assemblies did we install as ACT projects? And so again, it's the new screens or updated screens in the web that you have some enhancements to. TWK Web API. This is something that we've been looking at for a long time. This is modernization of the GDS XML import. So if your development team has created an XML file that you use to import transactions through the current parser setup, this is a modernization of that process. Instead of creating an XML file, we now have a public API in CentralCommand that allows you to be able to insert data more efficiently than trying to create those XML files and get that data into the system. So the API allows us to modernize the way that we get data into the system. This is outside of the Parser 2.0 that Janice is going to talk about in a couple of minutes. So this is for those agencies who have external data that you want to be able to get into the system, and it allows you to call an API instead of having to create and test all of those different manual XML file formats. You're gonna do this instead of using the IM import functionality within the current CentralCommand parsers. This does also support tokenization. So if you're using tokenization, there are parameters that you'll use during the setup that allow you to continue to use tokenization to get those transactions into CentralCommand. Now, CentralCommand 7.6.1, like I said, this is the one you're going to install, even though you're downloading both 7.76 and 7.76.1. The only reason you're going to open 7.6 is to get the release notes. 7.6.1 is a cumulative upgrade package, so you only have to run the upgrade one time. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Janice so that she can help us understand what this is all about. Janice.
Michael, I'll still need you to click through the screens for me.
And I am happy to do that.
I'm sure. So good morning, everyone. Good evening. So Parser 2.0 we've created several new screens to support this. This is for future taking beyond just the TWK API, but this is for taking on additional scope of products. Right now, we are currently configured to run Trace, which is part of the TRAMS application. You'll note in the web browser, it is a web only. The web browser will have a section for parser, different from interface. It'll be parser, and we'll have several screens under there that support the microservices for the new Parser 2.0. Go ahead, Michael. So the first screen is the interface key, and once we've set up the microservices, that tells us what the credentials are for connecting to the provider, Trace, or any of the other, providers that we start working through. Well, this will tell us what the keys are, and you're able to go in and mask certain fields, passwords, or other information at this screen to say which fields you want masked. Go ahead. This is where there's 2 pages for this one. So you'll be able to set up your interface detail for your testing by environment. You can set up a test environment, you can set up a dev environment or production, and you'll have drop downs that'll allow you to state where you're putting that code. Go to the next screen. This is where you'll actually put in your credentials. Under the interface details, you'll put in your information for connecting to the provider. And that's what we will use to call that API. Go to the next screen, please. This will, under the provider source, will have the DLLs displayed so that you can see which ones you're using, or if you want to test different one, you can change the status of the DLL. So if you're in dev and want to test Trace version 2, you'll have it here, and you can state where you're testing it under. Go ahead to the next one. File status. This is going to show the status of the file as it's coming through the microservices and the API call. As each file comes in, it'll say processed or received, and then once it's picked up by the TWK API, it'll say sent. Go ahead to the next one. If you are getting errors in your file status, then you'll be able to go to the screen error notification. And this will tell you, for example, that your password is expired on your API connection, or there was an issue that you sent a file that you shouldn't have, resend a file, or it'll say it didn't have the right information for the TWK information. It was missing a PNR locator. So it'll tell you, and most of those times you would have to go back to your API JSON file or your application that you were sending from to correct the error.
And Janice, this is different than the normal view error messages screen, right?
Once it has passed through the TWK tables and data load picks it up, it then goes through your normal interface errors for view error, view fatals. Everything up to that point. Once it hits a TWK table, nothing changes. And this is not the same for, if you're going to use the TWK API, it will not go through these screens. This is just for the Parser 2.0 microservices that we will be creating down the line. Right now, the only one we have that we've done work with it and have access to right now is Trace. This is just another screen of the error notification.
Okay. I'm not seeing any questions yet for in the chat or the Q&A. So feel free to type any of those in now. Of course, we'll always be able to help afterwards. I see there's a raised hand, but you can use the chat or Q&A to type it. Oh, let me see if I can unmute Andy for a question. Allow mic. And okay, there you go. Now we can hear you.
Yeah, the chat was disabled for me.
Oh, okay.
By the way, it keeps saying chat is only available during the meeting. So I'm not sure when that is. But really, I just wanted to ask, what's the base ERP version required?
Or you can ask your question now that you're unmuted.
Yeah, what is the base ERP version required for 7.7.6?
Update 14 is supported.
14. Okay, thank you.
Yes, update 14 is supported. So the latest release of the the Unit 4 ERP platform is supported.
Yep, and I guess one other question. I mean, have you seen any problems with mysterious, abends failures in the new parser? And I don't mean the new functionality as far as connection.
We have seen some.
Yeah.
The ones I've seen have been from Amadeus.
Okay. All right. And the HHX hotels is settled and done.
Yes, but we have seen an issue with passive hotel and car that we're looking at.
Okay.
And this is the legacy parsers that you're talking about there, Janice, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Correct. 7.76 does have a parser, like per usual. It does have a parser release, separate from 7.76.1.
I'll read the notes on that.
All right. Any other questions?
Janice, you said, this is Michael again. Janice, you said that right now we are the first setup on the Parser 2.0 that we have is with Trace, and we've been testing that, and that is available to anyone who's using Trace today. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, if they're using Trace, and just keep in mind that any of the testing we've done with Trace has been with transactions we created through Trace. So it may be a matter of reviewing with whoever's looking at it.
Okay, excellent. And do you have a tentative who's next?
No, we've done some preliminary work for Sabre and Amadeus to start trying to use them in there, but we've not been able to fully test that yet. It wouldn't be using a Sabre API. It would just be calling our same Sabre and Amadeus code today and using so that it would go through the TWK API.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Well, if there's not any other questions, I'm happy to give everybody another 25. Oh, I say that. Just a note from the chat section, all release notes are available in the documentation section of Community for You, so you don't necessarily have to download the 7.7 release just to get that 7.76 release notes. So you can get the release notes from the documentation section and then download the 7.76.1 release for the upgrade package for the installation and upgrade of your environment. So yeah, happy to give everybody back. If there's not any other questions sneaking in here at this moment, their time for their day. Thank you so much for attending, listening in. If there's any follow-up questions that come from being able to let some of all this exciting information sink in, or specific to how you as a user are using Central Command, we're here to help and walk through that process with you guys and provide even more information. But until then, we will see you in February or March, hopefully both, for the conversations around spring cleaning and cleaning up and keeping a healthy environment and the online data access and how to do web reporting. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.